October 6, 2024, marked a grim anniversary, 1 year since the devastating attacks of October 7, 2023, that plunged the Middle East into a new cycle of violence. The memories of that fateful day remain vivid, with countless lives lost and communities torn apart. The scars of the past year are still fresh, and the region continues to grapple with the aftermath of those tragic events. As the day dawned, Israel launched airstrikes targeting key Hezbollah positions in Beirut, Lebanon. The air was filled with the roar of jets and the thunderous explosions that followed. Buildings crumbled, and the city was once again thrust into chaos. The precision of the strikes was evident, but the collateral damage was unavoidable, leaving many civilians in distress. The response was swift and fierce, with Hezbollah retaliating with rocket attacks on Haifa, a major city in northern Israel. Sirens wailed as residents scrambled for shelter, the sky lit up with the trails of rockets, and the ground shook with each impact. The damage was extensive, and the fear palpable, as the cycle of retaliation continued unabated. This exchange of fire was not an isolated incident but the latest chapter in a year-long conflict that has brought Israel and Iran, along with their respective allies, into dangerous proximity of a full-blown war. The stakes have never been higher, with each side unwilling to back down, and the potential for a larger regional conflict looming ever closer. Tensions have remained high since the October 7 attacks, with both sides engaging in sporadic bouts of violence. Skirmishes along the border, rocket exchanges and airstrikes have become almost routine, each incident adding fuel to the already raging fire. The region is a tinderbox, with any spark having the potential to ignite a larger conflagration. The anniversary, however, seemed to ignite a dormant fuse, leading to a dramatic escalation of hostilities. The violence that erupted on October 6 was a stark reminder of the fragility of peace in the region. The renewed hostilities have shattered any hopes of a ceasefire, plunging the Middle East into deeper turmoil. The recent attacks have sparked international condemnation and renewed calls for a ceasefire. World leaders have voiced their concerns, urging both sides to de-escalate and return to the negotiating table. The United Nations has called for an immediate cessation of hostilities, emphasizing the need for dialogue and diplomacy to resolve the conflict. However, with both Israel and Iran seemingly entrenched in their positions, the prospects of a peaceful resolution appear increasingly distant. Diplomatic efforts have so far yielded little progress, with each side holding firm to their demands. The stalemate continues, and the path to peace remains elusive. As the world watches with bated breath, the question remains, can this conflict be contained before it spirals into a wider regional war with global consequences? The international community is on edge, aware that the repercussions of this conflict could extend far beyond the Middle East, potentially destabilizing the entire region and beyond. The coming days and weeks will be critical in determining the future trajectory of this volatile situation. In a somber address to the nation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel is engaged in conflicts on 7 fronts. These fronts include not only the traditional adversaries like Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, but also newer threats emanating from Iran and its network of proxy militias spread across the region. Netanyahu specifically named Iran as the orchestrator of the October 7 attacks, accusing the Islamic Republic of waging a proxy war against Israel through its allies. He pointed to Iran's support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and various Shia militias in Syria and Iraq as evidence of its malign intentions. The Israeli Prime Minister's declaration underscores the precarious security situation that Israel finds itself in. Surrounded by hostile actors and facing threats from multiple fronts, Israel feels increasingly isolated and under siege. This sense of vulnerability has led to a hardening of stance in Israel, with a growing chorus of voices calling for a more aggressive response to Iran and its proxies. As the conflict rages on, it is the innocent civilians who bear the brunt of the violence. They are caught in the crossfire, their lives upended by the relentless fighting. Families are torn apart, homes are destroyed, and the future seems uncertain for many. The recent airstrikes and rocket attacks have resulted in significant casualties and displacement, exacerbating the already dire humanitarian situation in the region. The destruction is widespread, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, leaving countless people without shelter or basic necessities. In Lebanon alone, over 1,400 people have been reported killed, and thousands more injured since the conflict began. The toll on the civilian population is immense, with many families mourning the loss of loved ones and struggling to cope with the trauma of the ongoing violence. The Gaza Strip, which has already endured several wars and a crippling blockade, is once again facing a humanitarian catastrophe. The blockade has severely limited access to essential supplies, making it difficult for residents to obtain food, water, and medical care. The relentless bombardment by Israeli forces has left a trail of destruction, with homes, hospitals, and vital infrastructure reduced to rubble. The healthcare system is on the brink of collapse, with hospitals struggling to treat the influx of injured civilians. Over 41,870 people have been displaced from their homes in Gaza, seeking refuge in overcrowded UN shelters where conditions are rapidly deteriorating. These shelters are overwhelmed, lacking adequate resources to provide for the basic needs of the displaced population. The international community has expressed grave concern over the mounting civilian casualties and the deteriorating humanitarian situation. Global leaders have called for an immediate ceasefire and increased efforts to provide humanitarian aid to those affected by the conflict. Aid agencies are struggling to provide relief to those in need, but their efforts are hampered by the ongoing fighting and restricted access. Convoys carrying essential supplies are often delayed or blocked, leaving many without the help they desperately need. As the conflict shows no signs of abating, the human cost continues to rise with devastating consequences for the people of the region. The long-term impact on civilians is profound, with generations growing up in the shadow of war, facing an uncertain future filled with hardship and loss. Section 4. Israel's military doctrine, a time of reckoning. The current conflict has put Israel's military doctrine to the test, exposing vulnerabilities that have long been masked by its image of invincibility. For decades, Israel's military strategy has been predicated on the concept of overwhelming force. Swift, decisive military campaigns aimed at achieving clear-cut victories against its enemies. However, the current multi-front war, particularly the protracted conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon, has challenged this approach significantly. Hezbollah, with its vast arsenal of rockets and sophisticated guerrilla tactics, has proven to be a formidable adversary, capable of inflicting significant damage on Israeli territory and holding its ground against the IDF. This shift from conventional warfare to asymmetric conflicts has exposed limitations in Israel's military capabilities and strategic planning. The Iron Dome, Israel's much-vaunted missile defense system, has proven effective in intercepting short-range rockets but has shown vulnerabilities against longer-range missiles and drones. The conflict has raised questions about Israel's ability to effectively defend itself against a wide range of threats, particularly in a multi-front war scenario which is increasingly complex. Section 5. Iran's shadow, the mastermind behind the attacks. While Hezbollah claims responsibility for the rocket attacks on Israel, many in Israel and the international community believe that Iran is the mastermind behind the recent escalation of violence. The intricate web of alliances and enmities in the Middle East often points back to Tehran, where strategic decisions are made to influence regional dynamics. Iran has been accused of providing Hezbollah with the financial resources, military training, and advanced weaponry, including long-range missiles and drones, that have been used in the attacks. These resources have significantly enhanced Hezbollah's capabilities, making it a formidable force in the region. The relationship between Iran and Hezbollah is not just one of convenience, but of shared ideology and objectives. Iran's involvement in the conflict stems from its long-standing hostility towards Israel, and its ambition to become the dominant power in the Middle East. This ambition is driven by a combination of religious, political, and strategic factors. Iran's leaders view their support for groups like Hezbollah as a means to project power and influence far beyond their borders. Iran sees Israel as an illegitimate state and a threat to its regional aspirations. This perception is deeply rooted in the ideological framework of the Iranian regime, which views the existence of Israel as a challenge to its vision of a unified Islamic world under its leadership. By supporting Hezbollah and other proxy militias, Iran aims to bleed Israel through a war of attrition and undermine its security. This strategy is designed to keep Israel perpetually on the defensive, diverting its resources and attention away from other potential threats. Iran's strategy of using proxy forces allows it to strike at Israel without directly engaging its military, thereby avoiding a full-scale war. This approach provides Iran with a buffer, reducing the risk of direct retaliation while still achieving its strategic objectives. This approach allows Iran to exert influence and advance its interests in the region while maintaining a degree of plausible deniability. By operating through proxies, Iran can deny direct involvement in conflicts, complicating the international response and making it harder for its adversaries to justify direct action against it. However, the recent escalation of violence suggests that Iran's strategy of controlled chaos may be backfiring, pushing the region closer to a wider conflagration. The increasing intensity and frequency of these clashes raise the specter of a broader conflict that could engulf multiple countries, drawing in regional and global powers into a potentially devastating war.